Hey, fellow settlers of a fantasy land, it's me, Mario, and today we're still talking about Terra, a game that I'm in love with, and I'm lucky enough I'm able to play with a lot of German players since they have an upcoming tournament, which is pretty important to them. So I see games popping up in an easy way on BGA, while it was pretty hard to get a 4P game going first. Today we're gonna talk about Druids. Druids are not the best. They are probably in the middle of the pack as far as power level is concerned, but they are my favorite faction overall. I'm not sure I understood them deeply enough because I don't have that many chances to play with them. The problem with Terra Nova is that if you want to win, there are two factions that are above everyone else, maybe three factions, but two most of the time. So a lot of the time in the first few seats, you're gonna just pick them. So I think that I have something like 20, 30 games with them, considering real life games and BGA games altogether. So I'm not sure I've understood them completely, but I really liked what they do. So what do they do? First off, what does their power do? So their power is a bit weird to understand if we're not gonna talk about palaces immediately. So the power is pretty easy. You can convert 3 powers into 2 victory points. That's a power that is in addition to what you can do already, which is convert 1 power into 1 coin. The cool thing is that it's a free action and you can do it in between rounds. This is actually very important, as we're gonna see. And basically, it's a good way to make points because it's double the normal rate. So normally by the end of the game, you're gonna gain 1 point every 3 coins, and this power will basically let you convert 3 powers instead of into 3 coins into 2 points, which is double the rate. But of course, most of the time you're gonna spend the power on power action, so you're already getting a better rate. In some cases, way better rate. Like if you consider that you can spend 4 coins into basically 8 coins, or even 3 power into 10 coins. That's about 3 times the normal rate. But this one is very cool because of the left palace. The left palace is incredibly cool, and it says that you get 4 power as an income, which is actually very relevant, but you also get 2 power charges at the end of the round when you're passing per every settlement that you get on the board. A settlement is considered a group of building or even just one building in an area. So if you have like 3 buildings over here, 1 building over here, 1 building over here, you get 3 settlements total, so you're gonna charge 6 power. The cool thing with this is that you can charge even 10 or 12 powers at the end of the round. And while normally that will be overkill, it's actually pretty good because in between rounds you can convert all this extra power into coins or into victory points. So you see why this ability is actually pretty important, especially in the later parts of the game. It's incredibly cool on the last round, but it can also come into play earlier than that, depending on your plans and on how many resources you can use, and of course on the kind of boosters you're gonna get. The cool part about this power is that you can mix and match coins and victory points depending on the boosters that you have and on the bonus round you're getting into. So if you don't have many ways to score from the bonus or from the bonus tile, then you can go for victory points earlier, even starting on the third round. Even though normally I would say that on the third round it's still better to get coins. You can also get a combination of coins plus victory points, of course, it depends. And the right palace is actually very interesting too. The right palace gives you the water one, what are they called? Like cool tiles. I don't remember the name in English of the Terra Mystica tiles. But basically, you get 3 victory points each time you upgrade a house to a trading post, which is a very strong power to score well. The problem is that, of course, it costs 14 coins to get to the palace, and you're not gonna get any economy out of it. So it can be pretty tricky. Other things to talk about, the board. If we're talking about weaknesses and powers, they don't have any particular weakness. They have slightly above average trading post, so it's 3 coins and 1 power. Well, I guess normally it's something like 2 coins, 1 power, or 2 coins, 2 power, depending on the faction. While here they're totally standard: 3, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1, and 0. It's like the baseline for a faction. So there's not much to talk about. What is down here? I mean, again, the trading posts are a bit above average, but remember that most of the time you're better off selecting fairies if you want something that is above the normal rate, since their trading posts are actually amazing. So there's that. You will not select druids just because of the trading post, but they can work pretty well with them. So let's talk about the home terrain first, and then we're gonna talk about their main strength, in my opinion. So green is actually in a very good spot on this map. Green is actually pretty cool. It depends a lot if you're against red or if you're against blue. Thankfully, druids and green in general is very rarely in a sandwich. So normally, as you might know, you're gonna get yellow and black in a game, and you're on the opposite side of the wheel, which is very cool because even in 4P games, you are gonna have only one direct opponent and not two on the wheel, which is pretty cool. The starting spots are a lot. I like these spots a lot if red is not in the game. If red is in the game, it can get tricky because this is one of their best actually starting spots, because from here they can expand both south and north thanks to navigation, and it's pretty easy for them to do that, and it's also pretty good economy wise. So this spot is very good with yellow and black and no red. The spot down here is even more tricky, and I don't like it. I like this one more most of the time because I think it's easier to get to this spot in other ways. It's not a good spot for a city, because you need a bridge probably and like 3 total spades, which are a lot for a city. You can also go down here, of course, and that would require just 3 spades. It's just that this hex is in every single game gonna be contested. Either yellow starts there or black are gonna immediately dig there to dig to the other star part. So this is actually not a good position to start from, but it's a good position for connection later on. This one is one of the favorite spots, again, if red is not in the game. That's because it cooperates so well with yellow. If you're playing with yellow, against yellow, with green, and there's no red, it's way better to cooperate and go north. So dig over here, dig over here. So with 2 digs you get 4 hexes for a city, and you're also gonna get a lot of power thanks to yellow developing over here. For yellow is very good to go over here. It's very good, very easy to do. They have again 4 hexes for just 2 digs. It's good for the early game for them. So you want to cooperate. You don't want to go here most of the time. I mean, I could see some corner case scenarios in which you really think that yellow is in such a good position that you want to stop them, but most of the time it's better to cooperate there. Other good spots that might be okay to talk about is this one. This one more rarely. This one is good just because you have 1 nav green hex just on the other side of the river, and you can get a town again with 2 spades, like 2 spades, a bridge. It's not as good as other spots, but it can be useful in a pinch. It's actually one of my favorite spots against red, because again, most of the time red will start over here and either here or here, most of the time here. So it means that a city down here might not be easy to do, and you don't want to start over here, and we've already talked about here. So I think that your starting position should be by default this one and this one when red is not in the game, But you can also go for this one and this one when red is in the game, depending on where they place their dwellings. I don't think blue is that bad for you, so red is very important for your starting hexings and to determine your cities. Blue is not as aggressive against you. They really like this position over here if black didn't start over here, which is actually pretty rare. They like to start down here just to dig and go down there, and they also have a hex over here. So most of the time, at least in the early game, they're not gonna contest you. Like, an hex that might be important for you, two hexes that might be important for you are these two, and they are not always contested, or at least you can get good tempo against blue, or you can go another way. Once again, you will never have blue and red in the same game, so if you have blue contesting this hex over here, you can just go over here. They are not interested in that one. It's too far from them, too distant from the center of the map, and it's not a good position in general for them. So I would say that the normal town spots are going to be, again, right here or right here. Right here is one of the most common ones. If red is not in the game, you can also go for a town down here. It might be more risky, and sometimes you even go for a city over here, snaking through the map, just because it's so good for connection to have these 4 hexes in the center. You will get connected all the time. It's actually pretty hard for green to be completely cut off connection, but that said, with Druids, most of the time, you're not caring that much for connection in 4P. In 3P, you might be still consider that connecting is good, but given that you have such a good power to convert the economy into points, most of the time you just want to max out what you can score from the round bonus and from the booster that you got, but you don't bother competing too much for connection. Most of the time, like yellow and black are going to compete for like 12, 13, while you can be actually happy with something like 9 structure, focusing more on scoring and on scoring from your own power. Alright, I would say that that's it for what the map is concerned. What are the strengths and the weaknesses of Druids otherwise? I think Druids, in my opinion, really need the palaces to be picked. Otherwise you're gonna pick witches, pardon me, fairies all the time, just because fairies are better economy wise and they are more flexible since they can go for TPs and the palace if they really need to. While with Druids, I think you have to center your main plan around the 2 palaces, otherwise you're not gonna pick them. Not because they're bad, just because the other half is better, so you just go with the other half. By the other half I mean the back, so the fairies. So the 2 palaces actually promote very different play styles, and I don't think I've ever built both of them in a game. I mean, I might have in weird games just because of this booster over here, if I was sure that I could get it twice, but most of the time you go for either the first one or the second one. The first one is by far the most common one, just because it's less all-in. You're gonna get a lot of economy out of it. The best thing would be to have a round with palaces and then a round with houses. Especially if you have some incentives to upgrade navigation in the first few rounds. So if you have something like navigation, palace, and then houses, probably not the first 3, just because economy wise it might be too tight, but like second, third, and fourth round, like that would be very good. Just because after you build the palace, you really want to spread out with houses and reap the rewards. It can also work the other way around, that you can spread out with houses and then go for the palace. In my opinion, it works a little worse just because you need... it's hard to get enough economy from houses alone to be able to go for a TP and the palace in the same round and then use the palace properly. So I like more, I think, going for the palace first and then for houses. But it depends a lot. Like, a good way would be to spread around and have already 3 settlement. Pardon. by the time you get the left palace down, and then try to go up to 5-6 settlements. For this reason, when you go for the left palace, you a lot of the time are gonna go for a single city, sometimes even no city at all, but I would say then in 4 players it's pretty hard to be able to spread around so much that it's better to focus all in on the left palace and on spreading out than it is to just form one town. So I think one town is what I'm gonna go for the most with Druids. Sometimes you can go for 2 cities, but I think with the left palace that's less common than 1 city for sure. So that's the plan on the left palace. The right palace is trickier, once again, because it's so much all in. So you sacrifice all the economy that you got, and you already need to have some houses. So in my opinion, the right palace is very rigid, and its gameplay involves getting palace, TPs. This game I lost because I think it's very hard to exploit a palace that doesn't give you economy this early. So I basically botched my whole economy to go for right palace, and then I tried to go for TPs, and still I wasn't able to get all 4 TPs down. So it was not worth it, unfortunately. But I think that if you take these 3 scoring tiles in a row and just slide them to the right, so that on the 3rd round you get the palace, and on the 4th and 5th you get TPs. For other faction, it's not as easy to score well, just because 2 TPs round in a row, it's not that good for economic factions, like again for the Sun Worshippers or for the Leprechauns. Just because you are probably gonna easily max out one of these, but what are you gonna do on the second one, you know? Probably you want to do something else, so you are not gonna get enough points. While if you went for this palace, you would not have that much economy, but you can still max out all the TPs in 2 rounds, going for maybe 2 and 2 or something like that, and you're gonna get 12 extra points because of that, which is probably enough to justify it. Again, this one is very tricky to pull off, and I think again the best combination is these 3 tiles in a row on the 3rd, 4th and 5th rounds, so it's pretty rigid. But I would say that in general, the game plan for Druids is kinda rigid. You need a palace. You need it kinda early-ish to be able to use them. I mean, you could go for a 4th or 5th round palace with this ability, especially if you got houses first, but it's way better to have it a bit earlier, but not too early, because sometimes that can be a problem economy-wise. I would say that a sweet spot for the left palace is 2nd to 4th round, so you need to have the palace scoring tile in one of these 3, and then you need houses after that. For the right palace, I've already talked enough. So the overall game plan is pretty rigid. That's what is holding Druids off, I think, in most games. Also in some games, Druids can work pretty well if you can expand, but if you're contested on city spots. But it's hard to judge that from the start of the game. So I would say that fairies are most of the time the correct pick, just because they're flexible. But remember that when you get a palace scoring in some of these rounds, you should think about Druids and you should try them out. Also, Druids are terrible with a late town scoring. It's just not for them. So the round track is a bit tricky. Just remember to consider it before starting the game. Also, this one is amazing for them. This booster is just amazing, and this one is also pretty good with green in general, just because they have better than average TPs. But this one scoring for palaces is so good for Druids. They can use it, and also they can use the power to score well, even in the late game. So this one is probably the best booster for them to have in a game. Alright, that's it. See you next time. Mario's out. Bye bye.